Hello, speaking today to Lamisse Muhtaseb, HR Director of Purpose, Culture and Inclusion, lead at Deloitte in the Middle East. We will be talking about purpose and diversity. Hi, Lamisse, how are you?
Hi, Omnia. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Lamisse, Deloitte has released the fourth edition of Women at Work report recently. Can
Yeah.
you talk us a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Omnia, thank you for having me on this. I'm a follower and a big fan of a lot of the work that you're doing. So thank you for always keeping these conversations going and for inviting me on to speak to you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Deloitte recently did release their Women at Work report. We've also got Women in the Boardroom report. Those reports are not specific to the Middle East and they're not specific to Deloitte. They are very much a global outlook report where they interview thousands of women in different markets and really get a sense of how things are moving in many areas within the workplace, whether that is from well-being, career advancement, and a number of other things. We're looking at those findings now. They're all online and people can access those. And it's just really interesting to see what the sense is and what the feeling is from, a global perspective as well in that sense. And then we really look at how we bring that into the region and look at some of those common themes that are coming out of the report. But it's a really great kind of input point and insights. For example, women are incredibly loyal within their workplace, and that's seen an increase. There's an increase in productivity. They feel that they have support to progress. Yet there is another side to this where there's an equity point, which is really creating working practices that allow them to meet all the commitments that they have at home and in their careers and in their ambitions. They don't always have the opportunity to speak up and have the safe space to talk about the things that they need to be able to progress and to be able to manage those. So there's a number of things to try and consolidate coming out of those reports, but it is really interesting to see what's making positive progress and, the pace of change and the speed of that and really be able to look at some affirmative actions and measures with that and a number of other data sources as well. But those reports always provide really great insight.
Right. Let's dive into a little bit of diversity and understanding. How do you measure the impact of these reports on diversity and inclusion initiatives within any business?
How do we use these reports to measure impact internally? Well,
Yeah.
I think it really, there's a number of input points that we look at, whether it's the external market reports, getting a global outlook on a sense of really what's happening in the market with best practices, working practices that are happening, but also it's really important to look internally as well. When we do launch a program, when we start to really develop a strategy around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and keeping in mind that this is, a changing environment, a changing landscape, it's really important to be intentional and have an objective towards what we're trying to achieve. So not every company is trying to achieve the same thing. Not everyone has the same starting point. So what your impact is will really depend on what it is you're trying to achieve from those initiatives and those programs. And so when we develop our strategy and we do look at those programs and those initiatives, it is really important to make them tangible as well. So we do want to understand what the impact is. So whether it's around progression, whether it's around engagement, feedback, productivity, retention, there's a number of different elements that you can look at, and more importantly, speak to your people. So, we do regularly engage with them through the engagement surveys, through focus groups, through open dialogue, to understand what's working and what's not. Because I don't think you can also assume that if something's working today, then we're good. We can just keep that going for a few years and it will just keep doing its job. They don't necessarily run themselves, these programs, and the impact doesn't run itself either. So I think it's really important to continue to understand what your objective is, where you're trying to get to, and kind of that strategy, that ambition. And then you can really look at what the impact is. I was on a podcast recently, and one thing that I said around kind of really developing these initiatives is sometimes your starting point is, what if we didn't do it? You know, what if we didn't have this program? What if we didn't have this initiative? What if we didn't set these KPIs and these goals and so on? You know, what does that look like? And are we okay with that? And that's a really good starting point to say, well, what is the impact, and is it right? Is it enough? Or is there something else that we really should be considering?
Right. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, is there like a jackpot? Is there something that's, hey, this has worked for a while, succeeded, but now let's look at it. Is there an example?
Oh, is there an example of what has worked? I mean, there is absolutely no pill that we can take. And, and then, you know, we've got the perfect scene of diversity and purpose and equity and all of these things. So I don't think there's kind of one magic initiative, but I do think there are things that have a really good shelf life. You know, I think there are things that just last, that have been around for years and work. And I think things like mentoring and sponsorship and advocacy, you know, I think those things, this is all behavior driven, you know, so I think, you know, really investing in your underrepresented groups, investing in women, them having the right mentors to navigate all of those crossroads and those transitions that they face in their career journey, and supporting them through that, but also having those role models and that storytelling, and, you know, making it feel like things are attainable for them. You know, it's not just about, do you want to progress, but also, do you feel like you can do it? Do you think it's attainable for you? Do you think, you know, you have what you need to be able to do that? And I think a lot of companies need to ask themselves that. And these are all things that we've had in Deloitte for a while. So, you know, the mentoring programs, the sponsorship, we've seen great success from those kind of programs. But as the business grows and as the business changes, you just have to keep making sure that there are enough beneficiaries of these programs, because there's more and more, hopefully more and more women in the pipeline who should have access to those opportunities.
Let's go back to the basics. Why is it difficult till today in 2024 for women to actually excel in their career and be out there? Why is being a woman in work intimidating in today's world?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a real historical construct of the workplace. And I don't think it's a very simple answer, because, you know, every woman's journey is different, and I think that has also evolved. Whereas perhaps the construct of the workplace hasn't evolved so much, and we probably need to look at that. Within Deloitte, we do understand that there are barriers to women's progression, or perceived barriers at least. There are life changes that women have within their lives, and as they progress, and you see this bottleneck at kind of a mid-career, mid-manager grade, where life changes, whether it's caring responsibilities, whether they, you know, start a family, whatever, you know, whatever that may look like. But sometimes there are just these points in a woman's life where their priorities change, where their outlook changes, where things become more important to them or more meaningful to them, and things change. And we do see that with our male colleagues as well, but perhaps not as evident. And that comes with its own set of kind of rigid challenges. But for a lot of women, I don't think historically there has been an open, safe space to talk about all of these things. And I think it's really important to create a dialogue and create space for dialogue, for women to have a dialogue around, these are the things that I need to succeed. And it's not coming to the office every day, working 9 to 5, doing this and doing that. There's other things, there's other accommodations that I might need to be able to do all of this. It doesn't change their competency, it doesn't change their value, it doesn't take away from anything, it doesn't compromise anything. If anything, it keeps them really engaged and productive and delivering. So I think there's been a lot of historical obstacles for women in the workplace, but I do think through a lot of initiatives and through a lot of new kind of women gender focused policies, I think that can start to change, and I think that is changing actually. You know,
Yes.
we've seen great increase in representation of women across the business, across the Middle East, and Saudi's a huge success story. So, you know, it is definitely changing, but there is more to do.
Right. Does that bring does that actually, let me rephrase, does that bring purpose into the equation? If someone has both purpose, they will force themselves into the work, into everything, whether the organization likes it or not.
Yeah, I really enjoy talking about purpose because I think everyone sees this quite differently. And, to a certain extent, we look at, for me, I think, you really look at the strategy of your business and you ask yourself, right, how are we going to do this? What's our vision? What's our vision? And that's, what we're trying to achieve, and the strategy is how we're going to achieve it. And the purpose is really why. Why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? And I think that's a huge differentiator. Now on a very individual level, I think everyone has a purpose, whether they can articulate it or not, and it really needs to be aligned with the business, and that sets an anchor, I think, between the individual and the business that they're working in. For example, at Deloitte, we talk about making an impact that matters, and being able to really articulate what that impact looks like, and be able to articulate really how that aligns with a personal purpose and set of values, I think is also really important, because you really have to mean it. You can't have a purpose and differentiate yourself from that. And that sometimes becomes the identity of your business as well. So I think that it factors into everything. I don't think it just factors into DE&I. I think it's a huge factor across how we serve clients, how we drive our decision making, how we run our business, and the whole people experience as well, for sure.
Who's responsible for this purpose? Is it, I mean, yes, you spoke about the individual purpose, but who's responsible to actually turn that purpose to make that individual a person driven by that purpose to actually help grow the business or be part of it and be more engaged?
Who's responsible for purpose?
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone is. I think purpose is part. I mean, it stands out when you deviate from that a little bit. So I think everyone is a custodian of purpose within an organization, and the more it's in the language that you use within the firm, the more it's talked about, the more it's tangible, the more it's there, the more present it is in the organization. So I don't think it's a purpose statement that sits on a slide somewhere and you refer to it. I think purpose is everyone's a custodian of the purpose, and to be able to hold the accountability for that, to be able to drive decision making based on that, and to be able to have, to be able to talk about it as well with clients internally, and just really understand what the company means when we talk about, we are purpose led.
Right. And then let's tie that to women again. How can companies foster an environment that actually has purpose and in a way encourages women to go through their own purpose, their own individual, to be driven? How can that be possible? Or how can organizations do that? I'm sure it's possible,
How
but
do you kind of consolidate it?
Yeah.
You've got all of these really important agendas. You're absolutely right. You do. I think the view is that purpose is in everything that you do. So when we talk about diversity, when we talk about gender ambitions, what is it? What is that impact that we're trying to make from that perspective? What are we trying to work towards and we achieving, and what are we celebrating? And I think there's a really important point there to celebrate, the moments where you really do feel that, this is what our purpose is. This is how we deliver purpose to our clients, to our people, to our business. So I think purpose is really in everything you do. I don't think you can pick and choose that it sits with diversity or it sits with corporate responsibility, it sits with sustainability, but it doesn't sit with that client, doesn't sit with that client. I don't think you can pick and choose. It really has to be in the tapestry of the business. We have a number of programs, when we do just talk about corporate responsibility, for example, and this is also really important when we are in the market, that we are showcasing that we mean it. And one of our commitments to make purpose tangible is to impact 200,000 lives through education and skill buildings within the region by 2030. And that's through youth engagement, that's through alliances and working with other, for example, NGOs, but it's also Deloitte driven initiatives, Deloitte designed initiatives, so this is really about on a number of fronts, whether it's with our clients, with how we do business, whether it's in DE&I, with people's sustainability is a bit of an umbrella that we use around kind of the long-term well-being of our people, our business, our society. And making sure that purpose and the impact that we're trying to make is part of all of that. And that comes through a number of programs. And like I said, partnerships that we have, but also the decision making around,
Right.
it's not just how much work we're doing, it's how good it is. It's how important it is. Yeah.
You tapped on Saudi, and I really
Mm.
like that example because um, when I went to Saudi, I found females in the airport, and I was like so impressed. I was like,
Yeah,
how did
it's great.
they? Yeah, it's amazing. How did they change their mentality from, hey, I don't want to do this to, hey, I will do this and represent my country or be part of
Yeah.
the whole process of change? This is my final question, but it's really something that I'm very intrigued by. How can you change an employee's mindset from something they don't want to do to actually something they want to do? I would say purpose and explaining the purpose of it. What would you say?
Mhm. I don't think the journey of Saudi Arabia was about changing an employee's mindset necessarily. I think you're right. There's an element of mindset and there's an element of stigma that was there, but it was really driven by government initiative.
Mhm.
That's what the change in Saudi was driven by, and companies were like, "Look, we're on your train. We're ready to kind of go on that journey with you." And that mindset of progression and growth, and advancement, it's the way Deloitte works is not, we're in that country and we do something very separate there, and we're in Saudi, we do something very separate there. Our mindset has always been around progression, growth, ambition, and so on. And through those kind of government initiatives, we can also influence that, and we can have, we can bring that into Deloitte and we can influence what's happening in the market. So that journey of growth has been through government initiatives, it's been through really trailblazers in the region as well, and creating those opportunities for that vision to come to life. And again, it really comes down to that vision is, what are you trying to do? And you've got your strategy around, how you're going to do it, but the why is really where your purpose sits, and being able to articulate that is quite powerful.
I think it's a very interesting case study, to be honest, within the region and the world, is just to look at things and how, yes, of course, government initiatives, but how people jump on that and say, yes, we're going to do this and change and be part of that change, progression or elsewhere. In other cases, in other parts
Yeah.
of the world, it's unfortunately elsewhere, the other way around. But all right, final thoughts on purpose, women, diversity, and inclusion. What do you think is the three most important things that any company who wants to include more people from different backgrounds should do when it comes to purpose-driven strategies?
What's the most important thing that companies can do? I think there's a number of really important things, but I think the one element that I really kind of it anchors me a little bit is, do they trust that? It's building that trust and the power of trust within an organization, the power of trust when we go out to recruit, and really, you're looking at what you're saying and what you're doing completely aligning, so that your vision, your values, your mission, all of these things, the commitments that you're making and the impact that you're making in society with your clients, that you are actually delivering those as well and accountable for that. So really aligning, what you're saying and what you're doing, and building trust, I think is a fantastic foundation to start talking about everything else, and to differentiate yourself from the market as well. So I think one of the most important things is just building that trust and meaning it and doing it.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lamisse. I do hope
Pleasure.
so that, you know, more companies look into this and look at trust and purpose-driven strategies. But
Absolutely, yeah, it's powerful.
it's a pleasure speaking with you and have a lovely day. Thank you.
Amelia, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.